One of the things many horror movies have in common is noise, whether it's the screams of our victims or our killer, whether it is our footsteps as we run for our lives, our loud, heavy breathing, or the loud, dramatic music the directors pick to bring out the true horror and suspense of the situation. Sound always plays a big part in every horror movie.
But what if we took away that sound? What if we broke those rules? What if even breathing got you killed? What would you do then? Would you even be able to make it to the end of the movie? Would you live? Well, a few other directors seem to find this idea intriguing too. In this movie, we put those ideas to the test. You're probably thinking about A Quiet Place, aren't you? Well, what if I told you we were talking about Don't Breathe? Would you believe us then? Well, you shouldn't, because we're actually talking about Hush, a movie exclusive to Netflix.
In Hush, our victim is a deaf writer who decided to live in the woods like a hermit. One night, Perch Boy over here feels like going on a hunting spree. Our victim must defend herself by making as much noise as possible, okay? On a more serious note, let's give this movie a quick breakdown.
It involves a person with a sensory disability fighting for their life against someone without a sensory disability. Wait. Why does this sound so familiar? It sounds like a better movie that came out that same week on that same day.
So I know we said we weren't going to talk about Don't Breathe, and to be honest, we weren't either. But the thing is, we are, but also aren't. Are you about as confused as we are? Yeah. So we got Hush in 2016. We got Don't Breathe that same week that year. They even came out on the same day. Funny coincidence, isn't it? And as the script is written, we'll be getting A Quiet Place.
On the surface, Hush, Don't Breathe, and A Quiet Place are all different movies. And while each have a wildly different execution, they all share the same premise we mentioned before. We still have a person with a sensory disability fighting for their life from a person or people without these sensory disabilities. So now we can't help but wonder why some of these movies are better than others.
What separates Don't Breathe and Hush, and will A Quiet Place hold a candle to either of these movies? In regards to A Quiet Place, quite frankly, we don't know yet. What we do know is that A Quiet Place shows a lot of promise. However, that's not always enough to go off of.
Take the trailer for Hush as an example. It looked great, but it was meh. And take the trailer for Don't Breathe. It was good, and it was good.
So now to address the question, what did Don't Breathe do that was better than Hush? Or rather, what does it boil down to?
Surprisingly, it's believability. It's something we complain about in regards to nearly every horror movie ever made.
Now let's get one thing straight, both these movies reside in believable, realistic settings.
In Hush, our deaf hermit, as we've mentioned, lives in the woods, and no, she's not completely cut off from civilization. She has neighbors that live fairly close by and is only a short commute from a small town. She's also got access to the internet.
In Don't Breathe, our blind shut-in lives in modern-day Detroit in a neighborhood which is about as abandoned as your local Toys R Us. Now, what makes these movies different is the consistency of the characters within the situations they're placed in. In Hush, everything is pretty believable until towards the end. Our brave hermit is hurt from trying to fight off her killer. She's in the bathroom, the door and window are locked. She's crouched down on the floor with knife in hand, keeping an eye on the door, but she's taken the extra measure to barricade. The killer, however, comes in behind her through the vents. Now, mind you, if she's deaf, she doesn't hear him drop down from the ceiling.
I mean, you'd think she'd feel it because vibrations are a thing. Anyway, we continue to roll with this. It's not such a big blunder that it can't be overlooked. I mean, he could have been wearing sneakers.
The point is that he has full advantage because she can hear him come in. Instead, she suddenly turns into a kung fu master, stabs him, and gets away temporarily once again. Ultimately, she lives and is scarred for life. However, I have to say that a more believable ending would have been that she died in that bathroom.
But in Don't Breathe, we get more consistency. The old blind shut-in plays the role of the blind samurai. He's angry at the world. Obviously, he's blind, but he moves through the world as if he wasn't blind. He is a legitimate threat, but can be defeated. The samurai also takes on a student. If you're as familiar with this trope as we are, then you know that the blind samurai is rarely deviated from, and is probably the least subject to change. It's simply put into a new setting each time it's used.
Our blind man follows this trope to the letter. If you've watched Don't Breathe, you might be wondering about if and when he takes on a student. Well, he does indirectly when he captures the last misfit, whom he tries to impregnate with a turkey baster. She learns about his life and uses his own strength against him. Thus, the student becomes the master, and she lives because of this. The old man also lives, but are we really that surprised? Like, honestly? I mean, they tried to kill and escape him throughout the movie, and not a single person managed to kill him.
It's like trying to reason with the anti-vaxxers. It's just not going to happen. Vaccinations aside, A Quiet Place seems to be trying to break the mold for this subgenre of horror and suspense.
Judging from the trailer, this premise is going to take place in a post-apocalyptic world where the killer is a non-human threat. Whether or not this is a success is up to the audience once this movie is released in theaters.
Well, thanks for hearing our thoughts on this coincidence. Comment down below if you agree or disagree with us on this, or if you know any other movies that parallel each other.
Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow our social media linked down below in the description if you've liked our video and want to see more from us. I've been Sam.
And I've been Yama.
And this has been a Melting Pot discussion.
Bye!
Bye!
They got a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with. I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got the best for so much less. You really flip your lid.